All right, up next is Bev Perino with Armadillo Property Management to talk about resident selection and probably a lot of other things. Bev is a wealth of knowledge for us, and I think will be very beneficial for you.
You're so sweet. Thank you. Should I just introduce myself? I'm Beth Perino with Armadillo Property Management. I've been in business over 30 years. I started when I was 10. I manage approximately 325 properties, single-family homes, apartments, duplexes, condos, townhomes in Fort Collins, Loveland, Windsor, Bellevue, cute places in Bellevue, Wellington. My niche is residential property management. I don't sell properties, nor do I do homeowners associations. I teach for the state of Colorado and for the NARPM group, which is the National Association of Residential Property Managers, which I'll get into that later. And in your notes, you've got my cell phone number, which I'm sure you find amazing, but please feel free to call me. But don't call me after 9, because I go to bed early, okay? So how many of you are private investors? Let's see, raise a hand. Awesome. How about work for a property management company? You do? So which company do you work for?
In California.
Oh, it's in California? Yeah. Well, we're glad you're here. And how many of you are real estate brokers? Any real estate brokers? Okay. Just kind of nice to know. So I need to read this per my attorney, best practices. The forms and information from this class are from my company and are my policies and procedures. Each of you have your own way of doing business. This is how I run my company. It's not a substitute for legal advice, right, written by my attorney, but a tool for you to use. If there are any reference to fees, it's only as an example and not a recommendation of myself. I make no warranties implied or expressed as to the accuracy or completeness of this course. So the first thing I love to start with is developing your team. And I've been doing this so long, remember I started when I was 10, that I used to do everything on my own. Felt like I just have to, and I think a lot of you feel that way too, you just have to answer every question right away. You have to, know how to be a plumber and know how to be an electrician. So I encourage you to develop a team. And your team can be your maintenance professionals, your plumbers, your electricians, your roofers, your general maintenance guys, flooring guys. Defer to them. Ask them questions. Again, it would be the one thing I would like for you to take away from today is that you don't have to do it all by yourself. I think that would be my best advice. Have a banker. I used to have a fair housing contact in Denver. She has since retired, so I'm kind of looking for a new one. But your favorite realtor, call them, and if you're determining pricing, which we're going to get into in a little bit, kind of ask them what they think things might rent for. Your neighborhood resource mediation office, your IT person, mentor. I would love to be your mentor. So I have taught this class for I don't know how many years have you been doing this? Like 5 or 6 years. And I always tell everybody, please feel free to call me. That truly is my cell phone number, and I'm happy to speak with you if you've got any issues. Again, I can't dispense legal advice, but I can sure be a good shoulder to cry on. Tenant screening services, your insurance agent, I think they're huge. And I think that I do with my company, have your insurance reviewed every year. I just found out from Mary Biggers, my State Farm agent, who I dearly love, that you can get addendums to your insurance policy now because I had an issue with the sewer backup on one of my investors' properties. Well, guess what? Sewer backup wasn't covered under the insurance policy. So $5,000 later, we found out that for about $15 a month or a year, you can get an addition to your regular policy, a sewer backup inclusion or whatever. And there's all kinds of other things that your agent can talk with you about. I also had a house that caught on fire, so I hope none of you have to go through that. Again, if you have any issues with that, call me. Mold and fire kind of are my big deal right now. We found out that investor had purchased this property in the 80s. Guess what? He had never increased the insurance of the property. Fortunately, his company had an automatic yearly increase, but it really wasn't enough to cover the things that it should have. So that's one. And then an environmental company. If you have a pen, I want you to write this phone number down. Jim Dennison, Century Environmental, 266-8000. He is the most fantastic man, PhD, owner of Century Environmental here in town. He has been a lifesaver for mold, asbestos, lead, all of those good things. I love him to pieces. Jim Dennison, Century Environmental, 266-8000. Police and Detective Task Force. I don't know, does anybody know that we have a new medical marijuana task force guy? Take this number down. Jim Leonard, Lenderts, Leonards, 416-2949. 416-2949. So I had to call Jim. You know, it's something new every day, right? I've been doing this for 30-some years. Something new every day. And I had to call Jim and say, you know, I had this young girl come to me and said that it's illegal for me to tell her that she could not grow medical marijuana in her property because she had seizures and, you know, the whole story, yada, yada, yada. So Jim and I talked about, you know, was it a single family home? Was it an attached unit? I mean, he's a wealth of information. And so I would encourage you, if you have that happen to you, and you have any questions about somebody saying that you're violating fair housing or ADA, that you give Jim a call and have him sit down and speak with you, maybe even take him to lunch. And then you've got me, 556-0887, so feel free to call me. Networking groups, I'm very involved in the NARPM group, which is the National Association of Residential Property Managers. Unfortunately for this group, you have to be an owner or a broker of a company. But I also belong to the Colorado Apartment Association, the Northern Colorado chapter. And as Jolie was speaking about utilities, we were instrumental in getting them to stop making payment arrangements for the whole balance. So we were able to get them to say, okay, you have to pay your back balance, and then you can make payment arrangements on the most current balance. Before it used to be that, say they owed $500 on their utilities. Jolie, are you still here? Don't yell at me. If they owed $500 on their utility balance, they could come in and make a payment arrangement for $20. Well, say $250 of that was a back balance and $250 of it was their current balance. They weren't making them pay the past balance. Well, we as property managers went to them and said, this isn't fair. This is a lien against the property. You're extending credit. You know, we want you to stop. So I encourage you to look at that group, and I think I included in your notes that the Northern Colorado RHA, which is the Northern Colorado Rental Housing Association, which is a part of the Apartment Association, meets the third Tuesday of each month, except for June through August. If you choose to go, you need to call New Colony and make a reservation. And it's at noon at the Hilton. Is where that meeting is. So I encourage you, and you as private investors are more than welcome to join that group. So I wanted you to have that information. So let's go to the next page, which is determining pricing. So how are you going to price? Where are you going to find out what your pricing is? We do research on Craigslist. We shop the competition. I'll drive by signs and just call on signs and just ask them, hey, what's the house on Smith Street renting for? Things like that, so that you kind of make sure that you're within the ballpark. You know, prices are changing so much right now, and again, having done this for so long, it's just amazing to me where the rents are right now. Call other real estate companies, property management companies. Look in the newspaper, if those of you that get a newspaper. I do. I love my newspaper. My husband does the crosswords, and I read Dear Abby and all that good stuff. Call on yard signs. Zillow is a great one. I wouldn't use them as just the be all. And the reason I say that is I own rental property in Albuquerque, and I'm actually going down next week to teach. That's all they rely on is Zillow, which I think is kind of crazy. So I would look at everything. I definitely look at Craigslist. What do you typically look at? Zillow? Sure. And those of you that have rental property, I'm sure you've seen signs in your neighborhood, right? Where you've seen well, just call on them and use a throwaway font. No, I'm kidding. You disguise your voice or just use my name. I don't care. So I have kept up, and you could start this today. I have kept up a spreadsheet, believe it or not, of every single property I managed for the past 15 years. So I'm able to look back and see where we were with prices, 15 years ago and where we are now. And, we had a big dip about 10 years ago, and now we're going back up. But yeah, again, the price is crazy. It depends. It really depends what the market is. Yeah. And I let my investors I suggest what I think the prices should be, but you could do it by percentage. You could look at cost of living. You could do it by a flat amount. It's kind of up to you. But I can't tell you how many times I've taken over a property from a private investor and they've been so far behind in rent. So I encourage you to, well, and you have to take that into account. Oh, for sure, for sure. Yeah, if you've got somebody that's paying on time and taking good care of it's up to you. Length of lease. All of my leases end May, June, and July. And I teach this class throughout the United States, and people are like, are you kidding me? All your leases end May, June, and July? And I said, heck yeah. My children do not know what a summer vacation is. I mean, they were working for me and, all that stuff. I want to get it over with. People are moving at that time of year, right? It's not necessarily driven by school or by CSU, but I don't want to have a property vacant in December. So my leases end May, June, and July. What are you going to do? Kind of determine that. So let's just say I'm taking on a new property in February. I will probably have that lease end in July and start them on another year lease. Not have it in February, right? Who wants to have a property when it's 4 below? Local restrictions. Are you having, or have you had somebody talk about occupancy? Was that kind of what the little gal Katie was talking about before? So 3 unrelated. I mean, I'm a real stickler about that. And I, again, have been managing for so long that I used to have 5-bedroom houses full of people, no longer do that. So, that's really important that you keep within the guidelines of the city. Homeowners association rules, make sure you can have a rental. So if you are going out and you're buying a condo or a townhome, make sure that when you're buying that with your realtor that they say, yeah, you can have a rental. I, believe it or not, was just getting ready to take on a property to manage, and guess what? The bylaws said no rentals. So just make sure that that's allowed. What's your security deposit amount going to be? Is it going to be 1 month's rent? Is it going to be $200? Is it going to be, some other amount? Are you going to allow pets? Are you going to have restrictions? Please be careful with companion and service animals. We can't charge a deposit for a companion or service animal. So just be careful about that. Are you going to have anybody speak to that, with your classes? They already did? Okay, perfect. We're a very, very pet-friendly company, so it just doesn't really, the only thing I'm not getting are deposits, but I have them sign an animal agreement, so they've got to, was called a pet agreement. Okay, so I have certain breeds of dogs I don't accept, and I'm going to get into that in a minute. However, if that is a service or a companion animal, so yeah, we'll get into certain breeds of dogs that I don't allow, unless they are a companion or a service animal, and then you've got to allow them. Okay, so I have a retired veteran from the Army who has a German Shepherd. It's a companion service animal for him, and it's a breed I don't allow. I've owned German Shepherds, I love them, but it's a breed we don't allow, and so, but he is allowed to have it because of the paperwork that he has. So describe the property in detail with your advertising. I think that's pretty common sense. I don't need to go through that. Offering what the features are and what the benefits are, and what are you going to include with the rent? I think that's important. Are you going to include the water sewer? Do the tenants pay all the utilities? That's something that you need to make sure that you've got up front. So let's go to the next page where we're going to find our residents. And my website is rentcolorado.com or rentfortcollins.com, and you're welcome to go take a look at it. It's very simple. I don't have pictures of people, but I have pictures of my properties. But you're welcome to check out my website. Off-campus student services, and then didn't Katie tell us there's something new? Rent search, yeah. So that's really cool. That's really cool. I'm definitely going to go back to the office and talk to my marketing person about that. Local web services. Has anybody used northerncoloradorentals.com? Are you still using them? Yeah. I mean, the market's gotten to be great, so we're not probably using them as much as we did, but they're wonderful. And it's a local couple of people that started that here in town, and I think they're great. There's national web services. I don't think anybody in town uses a national web service. I don't think it's necessary. Signs in the yard, I think is a great a great thing to do. Just make sure it's okay to put a sign in the yard. Newspapers. So I had some properties that were 55 and over, which I thought was really old until I turned 55. So I'm like, yeah, wow. But anyway, so you've got, that's where I typically advertise my 55 and over properties on the newspaper, just because I read them and I just figure that's a great way to go. Chamber of Commerce, real estate offices, visitor centers, and hotels. In the old days, when the market was really, really tough to get stuff leased, which I don't know if any of you, has anybody been through a really tough market in Fort Collins? Yeah, amen. I would have my kids staple candy to business cards, and we would put candy business cards in baskets and take them to the hotels and the visitor center and the Chamber of Commerce. I mean, it was just hilarious what we used to do. And I'm teaching this class to let you know, and I'm probably the bearer of bad news, it's probably not going to always stay this good. It's been staying this good for longer than I could ever have imagined. And so I'm just telling you that at some point in time, you may have your children or your grandchildren stapling candies to your business cards and taking baskets around town. Word of mouth is a great way to get properties rented. Letting tenants in your building, say if you have a fourplex or sixplex, know that you're going to have an apartment available. Obviously to the guys that you like, not, the people you don't like that are late all the time. You don't want them to have those friends in the building, right? Referrals from other management companies, CSU Housing Fair, networking. I used to be on the museum, the art museum board, and so that was a great place to network. Churches, your Rotary, just letting people know that you've got a property available. How many people allow Section 8 residents? And are you familiar with, so you do, is anybody not familiar with Section 8? So it's government subsidized rent. So did you hear the question? The question was, quiet cul-de-sac, older people. She said on the phone that, it's quiet cul-de-sac with older people. Did you actually deny them?
No, we said we didn't think it would.
You just described the neighborhood. So I would be careful with that. And we're going to get into fair housing in just a minute. So churches, neighbor to neighbor. I am currently working with the Volunteers of America. I have two sons that are, one is actually in Afghanistan right now. Bless you, Carl. And one that is out and roaming around the country. And so I'm working with the Volunteers of America to provide housing for our homeless vets. And they're just a wonderful, wonderful group. So I encourage you to do that. I've stopped people on the street. I don't have time to get into that story, but our coffee shops, you hear somebody needs housing, I've given them my business card. I use a QR code, and you can go online and get a QR code. And if you were to scan this, it goes directly to my website. You can also have it directly go to information about your property. So if any of you want to look into that, it's just, QR code something, Google it, I don't know. I have to tell you, I hire people much smarter than myself. I'm like, hey, I went to a class and heard about QR codes. Would you just deal with it for me? Yeah. So anyway, so that's kind of the places where you would find residents. So let's get to the next page, which is getting the inquiries, getting people to call you, pre-screening over the phone or via emails. So resident screening is a process of reviewing and checking criteria required by the landlord for all prospective applicants wishing to rent the property. And I'm reading this because I want you to understand that pre-screening helps you to qualify and eliminate, right? And eliminate a potential applicant prior to showing the property. There's nothing worse than me going to show a property and it's now, or the property's available in June, and they don't need it till August. So you need to pre-screen. You need to find out when they're going to rent the property. Or maybe they've got a dog that we don't allow, and they are not a companion or service animal. You need to get that out. So start with the first contact when you're pre-screening over the phone and emails. Again, pre-qualify them. Ask a number of questions. How many bedrooms do you need? We kind of have a little script that we go through when people call our office. What date do you need to move in? What's your price range? What location are you looking for? And do you have any pets and number? So we are a pet-friendly company, but I have some investors that I work for. We have over 100 investors I work for, and some love dogs. They don't like cats. Some like cats. They don't like dogs. So we need to make sure that we're not getting a pet in the property that's not supposed to be there. I have them drive by the property first, and that's because the market is so hot right now. Before, when the market was bad, again, who had the bad, you had the bad market, right? I actually had my cell phone number on my website. That's how desperate I was to get people to call so I could show them properties. And I was showing on weekends, Sundays, Mondays, nights, doing whatever I could. Now, yeah, you got a bunch of people looking at the property. They're going to come to your office and want to rent it. I just tell them, yeah, just go drive by the property, make sure it's something that you're interested in, and then let us know. So an instance is I've got a little house on Maple Street that's available right now. I have a couple that we're going to look at it this afternoon. Set it up. He called this morning and he said, we drove by the property. It's a little smaller than what we need, but we're going to keep looking at your website and see if there's something else available. We don't rent any property sight unseen. Does anybody rent sight unseen? So, do ya? Do ya? So we just, and again, it's my company policy. We had a bad experience with that. We rented to a couple. This was way before the internet. Again, remember, I've been doing this when I was 10. I just described the property to him. It was a really cute house on Columbia, between Matthews and, in that area. They got to town, they sent some money, got to town, signed the lease, paid the rest of the money, went over to the house. It wasn't what they wanted, and they stopped payment on all the checks. So at this time, we don't do sight unseen unless they can have somebody look at it. Yeah. So we rent sight unseen if they have a employer, a relative, maybe their realtor, take a look at it for them first. We kind of put that on them. So that is really the only way that we'll rent sight unseen. But that's a great way to go. So fresh corn is my new little saying, and fresh corn is a great way for you to remember familial status. So if you write fresh corn, familial status, race, equal, sex, handicap, color, opportunity, religion, and national origin. That for me and for my office is the best way to remember what our fair housing rule is. And so your fair housing person is going to speak next about that, but I'm not going to. Okay, so fresh corn. Familial status, so families are a protected class. Race, and then we just put in equal, because there wasn't an E, equal. Sex, and handicap, so that's your fresh. And then you've got your corn, which is color, opportunity, religion, and national origin. So, what's after opportunity? It's just equal opportunity. So we've just got, there were no E's and no O's. So we made some up. So it's equal opportunity. We stuck them in there. I didn't come up with that. I can't take credit, but I have a friend that did. So I think it's just fabulous. So how are you going to show properties? So let's talk about showing properties. I own rental property in Albuquerque, and I teach in Albuquerque. And it's really funny. They don't show typically they don't show occupied properties. And I said, you mean you wait till the property is vacant to show? They're like, yeah. And you know what they do? Also, which is horrifying to me, they'll take a driver's license and give them the key to the house and have them go show it themselves. I'm like, how many refrigerators and stoves have you lost? It's like, holy cow. So anyway, it's just, different areas are different, but we do show occupied properties. In our lease agreement, it says that we'll give them 24 hours notice. There is no, I'm just here to tell you, there's no state statute that says it's 24 hours. I have a friend in Longmont that has 3 hours in his lease agreement. I will give you 3 hours notice before I'm going to come show the property. Well, I don't think that's enough time. I just don't, so it's just up to you. But I'm just letting you know it's not any kind of state statute. We only do one showing per day because I just don't like to disrupt my residents that are living in the house. It's just a respect thing. Well, you can just show, what if you have prospective purchasers, or you have an appraiser, or your maintenance person? You just want to make sure that there's 24-hour notice of someone coming into the property. And I think it's good to spell that out because there really isn't a statute. So there's nothing to back you up. I just got a letter from one of my tenants today that, anyway, something every day, right? That said that we didn't give him 24-hour notice before we did our maintenance inspection. Well, I know we did, now I've got to prove it, and yada yada. So, anyway. If we have, and this is a different kind of market, if we have more than 4 people showing a property, we will typically have a second person go. I have, knock on wood, ever been accused of anything coming up missing during a showing, but I don't want to have people, because you know when they come in to do the property, they're just going to scatter all over the place. So if we have more than 4 people we're showing to, I have a second and sometimes third person showing the property with me. We don't currently show on weekends because the market's so good, but like I said, if the market goes back to not being so good, watch to not let pets out or in. And I say that because one day I spent 3 hours chasing down a dog. I found him, but it took me 3 hours and a lot of tears to get that dog back in the yard. But then I also showed a property and I said, well, look, their cat wants in. And I opened the screen door and I let the cat in, and the tenant called and said, thanks for showing the property, but that's not our cat. So, just make sure that, you don't do that. What if the property's a mess? Typically, I'll halt doing showings. If they've got a cosigner or a lease guarantor, I'll call that person. A lot of times parents will call and say, you better get that house cleaned up. Bev's going to, get mad at you. We don't allow people looking at the property to take pictures. I think that's kind of a violation of my residence property, and I saw it on CSI. Did you see that episode, where they took pictures and robbed the house? But, that's just my own preference. And discuss upgrades, if you're going to paint or do carpet or things like that, and then we'll always write that in the lease agreement as well. And have a safety plan. My sister showed property years and years ago, and she walked into the room. So here's the window, and she walked into the room, and there's the doorway. And this guy thought it was really funny to be kind of threatening and aggressive to her. Nothing happened, thank goodness. But when you're showing property, let the person go in the room first. And I'm just telling you that because it was just kind of a scary situation. And this guy, for whatever reason, was doing it to all kinds of property managers in town. But we got him stopped. So vacant properties, just make sure it's ready to be moved in. Nothing makes me madder than to go to a property and see that there's like 15 newspapers in the yard and nobody's picked them up. And we put pictures on our website. Make sure the blinds are on and the toilets are flushed and the lights are on, just things like that. And again, be safe when you're doing showings. So on the next page, I put down, what it's like to rent in a hard market versus a soft. We've got the pick of anyone to lease our properties in a soft market, and it's going to happen again. Just don't ever loosen your criteria for leasing. I just wanted to let you know about that. So what are some red flags and things to be wary of when a client comes to you to rent a property? And again, these are things that I've seen in my experience. They're way too anxious to move in, and most all of these have happened to me. The information on the application or the credit report doesn't match. So maybe they said that they've lived at a particular property last year, but when you pull the credit report, you see that they lived at maybe an apartment community and they owe them $5,000. That doesn't match. Current or past landlords or employers. So the reason I put that in very, very fast, my daughter took an application one day, and this was a couple coming from Rifle. He was going to go work on the oil fields, and they sat down at the table and they told her, this place is going to look better than and I know none of you have ever heard this. It's going to look better when we move out than when we move in, and we'll paint and we'll plant and we'll water and we'll mow every week, and it's just going to look awesome, and we'll do all these things. So she checks the rental, takes application, she checks her rental, and the landlord reference where they're currently living says, oh my gosh, they're going to take good care of the property, and they're going to paint, and they're going to, and she's thinking, that's the same thing I heard when these people were sitting at the desk. So she came to me, she says, Mom, or Bev, she says, this is really odd. So I started looking into it, and sure enough, those people had their grandmother or their mom be the landlord reference, because I called a friend in Rifle and we checked, and sure enough. So if you have, I think it's good to listen to your intuition. we're getting, if we have an issue like that, we'll actually pull the tax records and see if that person on the phone is actually the owner of the property because of things like that happening. And people are desperate. But these people had trashed the property. They were being evicted. I mean, it was just horrible. So make sure that you're really checking your references. The credit report shows a management company or apartment community that wasn't listed. I will not let anyone rent from me if they owe another management company or apartment community money. They've got to get that cleared up or paid in full before they can rent from me. They wave cash in your face. Had that happen, don't have a checking account, become defensive about the application process, want to exchange repairs for improvements for rent or utilities. How many of you do that? Or for rent or... Oh, I'm so glad to see no hands are up. Please don't do that. Don't exchange any repairs for their rent or their deposit. Make sure that you get the full deposit when they move in and the full rent. It can be such a liability. It can be such a liability. And it never works out. I'm just here to tell you, it never works out. And then be careful when employers or even landlords answer the phone in a manner that just doesn't seem like they're probably, I work for, I don't know, let's just say Carpet Exchange. Oh, I work for Carpet Exchange. And you call the phone number for Carpet Exchange and the guy goes, yeah. Well, I bet that's probably not really Carpet Exchange. So, and I'm just making that up. And how do you address landlords or relatives that are their landlords? We have a scoring system, which I'll get into in just a minute. But how are you going to deal with somebody that maybe hasn't ever rented before? We've got our students that haven't rented before, or maybe they've lived with their landlords. Are you going to require them to pay a double deposit or get a lease guarantor form, something like that? And just be careful if the landlord doesn't answer the questions. I've always been told that you don't ask how do I say this? You don't ask the question, you ask the question for them to answer it. How long have they lived at the property? What is the rent that they're paying? Don't give them the answer. Is that how I want to say this? So don't say, oh, I understand that they've lived at the property from January of 2015 until now. Well, of course they're going to say yeah, because it's their brother. And they pay 25 rent. Oh, yeah. So I've tripped people up in saying, well, how much is the rent? And then you can hear this silence. And then one time I heard, what's the rent? What's the rent over there? So it's like, yeah, there's just lots of little clues. And I don't. A lot of management companies do. So basically what she's asking is, do you send other companies or other landlords a form for them to fill out that verifies employment or residency? Sure. And you can do that. No, I don't do it. But you could do that. So basically what she's saying is when you go to get a reference from someone, you say, do you have a fax or an email? I have a list of questions that I would like to send you to fill out and have them send that list back either via email or fax. And I know a lot of the bigger apartment communities do it. And again, I've run my company. We just haven't had that much trouble. And so, we didn't used to do background checks, and now we are. Criminal background, and now we are. So times change, and you just kind of have to change with it. But that's really not a bad idea. So then you are getting written verification from that landlord that, yes, in fact, this person does live there. And it's a great idea, too, because if it's a business or a property management company, you're going to see on that email or that fax a real company, right? Yeah. So it's whatever your policy is. It's whatever you decide to do. So I think that's great that you do that. So let's go to the next page. I kind of made it so that you could open your page up. So you're going to have your explanation of my cover sheet over here, and then this is the actual cover sheet for my application. So I put a little cover sheet that looks like this on my application that just explains what our expectations of them are and what they can expect from me. And so I'll go over it a little bit with you now. So we're thanking them for renting. We want them to know that that we comply with all fair housing standards. I need to let them know that I am the broker of the company. And as a real estate broker, I have to disclose that. So this is where I disclose that to them. Our particular policy right now, and has always been, is first come, first serve. So the first person back in the office with their application fee and half of the security deposit, which is what we require, is the first application that we will take. And I have chosen to do my business this way. And it's funny because as I teach this across the United States, it's about 50-50. So a lot of people will take a number of applications and they'll lay them out and they'll take a look at them and then they'll choose. I get really nervous about that. I don't want a fair housing lawsuit. So if you are that company or the individual that does get a number of applications and then you choose which applicant, make sure that you have something in writing that discloses how you make that choice. Do you make it by number of years of employment? Do you make it by number of years of residence? I just don't want any of you to be in a fair housing HUD lawsuit for discrimination. And it's my understanding that your person is coming next to speak with you. So that's my policy, and I've had a lot of people say, well, but what about that second applicant that came in? They might be more qualified than the first. It's just the way we choose to do business, and it's just the way we've chosen to do business for the past 30-some years. So again, it's up to you, but I want you to be consistent, and I want you to be fair, and I don't want you to discriminate. First applicant in the door, right. So let's say I have a second applicant. So she comes in the door after you're my first applicant and you're my second applicant. I will go ahead and take the second application, not her money, but I'll go ahead and put at the top of my application it says 1, 2, or 3, and I will go ahead and take her application because maybe she owes New Colony Apartments $2,000. So I'll go ahead and take a backup, but we make sure that she knows that it's backup. And we're able to process our applications within 72 hours. The Real Estate Commission says that I've got to get that earnest money in the account within 3 business days. And so when my residents or when my applicant comes in to turn in an application, we're sitting with them right then and there and deciding, when are you going to come back to the office and sign the lease with me? So when they leave my office, they're going to the liquor store and they're going to go get boxes and start packing because they know that they're going to be renting from me because I can let them know right away. Nothing irks me more than, a long time ago, my leasing people would just kind of sit on an application and wait and wait and wait. And guess what happens? Those people go somewhere else. Not really necessarily in this market, but it could happen. So we just get that done really fast. So that's the way I do my business is it's first come, first serve, and that's what I tell people. And let me tell you, it's been a race to my office. I haven't seen people push yet, but it's been pretty darn close of people making a scene in my office saying, well, I had to stop at that red light, and I saw her just go right through it, or, something like that. I've even had them pull where the wife goes to the showing and the husband's in the parking lot. So now we've had to verify, they get sneaky. Now we've had to actually verify that you saw the property, because I'll ask them, what did my leasing agent have on? I know, it's crazy, but I want to be consistent. We don't want to talk fees. But you can look on my website. You can search other websites. But I think that it's important that you charge a fee if you're running a credit report. So I don't think, because you need to pay for that credit report and you need to pay for your time. But I have heard of some unscrupulous landlords that will take lots of applications and lots of application fees. And guess what? They just pocket that money, and it really doesn't go anywhere. So I just think we have to be very careful about being ethical in this business. So yes, I do, to that question, yes, I do charge an application fee. I cannot talk about fees, but you can go on my website and see what I charge. We use RentWise. I think I've got this written down somewhere. We used to use factual data, and it was fabulous. And they were in town for a very, very long time, and it just worked out great. And then they were bought out, and you know how that goes with anything that ever gets bought out. It's never the same. And so I would encourage you to look up Experian. I would encourage you to do credit reports. I've had people who have had great rental references and great employment references, but then I find out that maybe their past rental reference, or even the third one down, they were evicted or they owed money to another management company. So a credit report will tell you a lot. So it's whatever your policy is, but I do recommend that you look into that. So you can look through the rest of this. I've got credit report. I'm disclosing. What is your rental criteria? Is it 2 times the rent? Is it 3 times the rent? Is it 33%? What is your criteria for somebody to lease from you without condition? So ours is they need to make 2 times the amount of rent. If they don't, then it's an automatic. They need a double deposit or a cosigner. So we say that in our qualifying criteria because I don't want somebody to come in the office with their application all excited about leasing a property and they're not going to be qualified and they can't get a double deposit or a cosigner. So we just spell that out with our cover sheet. This is my belief. This is what I say on my application and what I say in my lease, and I may get in trouble, but this is what I say. Colorado State's medical marijuana laws do not and cannot override federal laws. So we prohibit the possession for sale, distribution, transportation, cooking, cultivation, and manufacture of marijuana. I've been told by a couple of realtors I could probably get attorneys that I could probably get in trouble for saying that. I'm just going to wait and see, but that's what that's what I say. And then talking about breeds, so there are certain breeds of dogs that I don't allow, which are Akitas, because one bit a friend of mine, Shar-Peis, because one bit me, Chows, Dobermans, German Shepherds, Pit Bulls, which are also known as Staffordshire Terriers, which is funny because a long time ago, my in-laws had terriers, and somebody came to me and said they had a Staffordshire Terrier, and I was like, oh, I just love terriers, not knowing that Staffordshire Terrier is a pit bull. Rottweilers, Rhodesian Ridgebacks, and that's because one of them bit my maintenance man. Wolf and dog hybrids and any mixes of the above. So we've had people that have had, German Shepherd Lab mix. I'm sorry, it's a mix and we can't. And then this is so silly, one of my leasing agents just got bit the other day by a Jack Russell. So guess what? A Jack Russell may be going up on the list. I don't know. And I will not rent to anybody with a ferret. Won't do it. You don't want to hear that story. Or call me and I'll tell you that story. So the next page, and I'm going to zoom through this really fast, is my application. So this is a copy of my application, just giving you general information that we need to get, which is just make sure, and if you're going to be running a credit report, you've got to have their full name, their social security number, and their birth date. So just make sure you get that. We get their present address, their previous address, and their landlord or their employment verification. On the back side, again, more general information, but what I want you to make sure you get is emergency contact information. And the reason I say that, yes, I've had 3 residents die, and that was sad enough. But getting emergency information is a great way to track down your deadbeats. So I have called the emergency contact, and I've said, hey, I need to return Dale's security deposit information. I don't say money. I don't say, information. Can you give me his forwarding address, or do you have his most current phone number? The one I have is disconnected. Well, what they hear is that he's going to be getting money, and dollars to donuts, he probably owes that person money, and they spill the beans every time. So that's why it's really important for you to put down the emergency contact information, right? So then I have a disclosure about my brokerage. Make sure they sign the application, because if they don't sign the application, you can't legally run their credit report. The next page is a scoring system, and really we can mark that out because I don't do a lot of that anymore because factual data dropped us. So anyway, but I encourage you to use some kind of system that is very black and white in determining whether somebody leases from you. We do a number system, and so within that number system, they can rent from us. They can rent from us, but they need a cosigner or double deposit, or they may be denied. So come up with some kind of system, not just how you feel about them. We don't want you to discriminate in determining if somebody can lease from you. Background checks, I've given you some information on that, and I think that Experian is a good one, so we'll flip through that. The next 2 pages are lease guarantor forms, so I've given you a copy of my form and why you might need one. And it might be because they don't make enough rent. They might not have enough rental history. It might be somebody coming out of the dorms. So I've given you that lease guarantor form. We do now, we didn't last year, but we do now run a credit report on the person co-signing. Denied applications, you have to let them know why you're denying them, and you need to give them a letter. And I've given you a copy of my letter for you to take a look at. It's considered an adverse action letter, and it's the new requirement through the consumer reports that we have to give them an adverse action letter. And I will also give them, avoid their check and send the check back as well. And the reason you might deny them is their credit or their background might not be acceptable. They may owe a property management company or private investor money. And with that said, really, really fast, you guys, if somebody owes you money, turn them over to collections. I don't go to small claims anymore. I used to drag the carpet, that they ruined up the stairs to go to small claims court. I don't do that anymore. Everything goes to collections. I don't care if they owe $50, send them to collections because it's going to be on their record, right? It's going to ruin their credit. And someday we hope that they're going to become an awesome citizen of the United States and decide to buy a car or buy a home. And guess what? You're going to get your money. So turn them into collections if they owe you money. They might have a pending eviction. That might be a reason why you have to deny them. They're unable to come up with the rent, or maybe they've got a particular dog that you don't allow. So in my lease agreement, and you guys can also go on my website and see all my forms. So my lease agreement's on my website. In my lease agreement, it says it's a fee, because we're not talking about fees, fine per day if we find a pet on the property. So we're very strict about that. So with the denied letter, can you deny because it was first come, first serve, and maybe they were the second or third person? Yes. So I do the disposition, right? State of Colorado, you have to do you let them, if they owe you money over and above the security deposit, do you give them time to pay you back? Yes, I do. And the reason I do that is I would much rather have them make a payment. I have a kid that owes me I think $1,200, and he's making $100 payments, and he is on time every month with that $100 because he doesn't want his credit ruined. Then that means that my owner's getting their money because, with a collection agency, you're only getting, 50%? So when I return the deposit, I send them a letter saying you owe, $500 over and above your security deposit. Please make arrangements within the next 30 days to make payments. And oftentimes I'll actually call them and say, let's just sit down. Let's just go over what you owe and let's make payment, because it's not my goal to ruin their credit, and it's my goal to get the money. But if they're hard-headed and they're not going to do it, it is what it is. So I just saw on TV, you can get this new thing called Sidekick, which is a secondary phone number on I love text messages. I really do. And a number of my residents, unfortunately, have my personal cell phone number, but which has been sometimes good and sometimes bad. But you know what? I'm telling you, that's where it's going. Emails, text messages, everybody's into that. And the nice part about that is everything's in writing. Everything's in writing. So I have a kid, remember I told you I hire people much smarter than myself, in my office that has figured out how to take pictures of text messages. So he does picture to screen and prints them. I don't know what he does. But anyway, so that way we've got written backup. So I really actually like text messages. So what you may do, those of you who own your own rental properties, have a cell phone for your business, because this is your business, right? And have your own personal cell phone. So that when you or look at this thing on TV. I'm going to look into it, actually. It's called Sideline or something, where it's a secondary line on your main cell phone number. Does anybody else give out their personal cell phone to your residents? Yeah, it just happens. It just happens. Thanks, you guys.